the most dangerous day in Qin Shi Huang's life. Yifang that day, King Yuzheng's leaf had not been torn off. Yifang that day, he had drawn his sword 1 second later. If Jing K's dagger had moved just a little bit further, then Chinese history might never have had a Qin Shi Huang. Without Qin Shi Huang, there might have been no standardization of writing, no unified wheel tracks, and perhaps China would not have formed a centralized empire so early. Even the later Han Tang Song, Ming and Qing dynasties might have followed a completely different path. And the turning point of all this happened in the Qin Palace in 227 BC. On that day, King Yuzheng of Qin was in an excellent mood, because he believed that the state of Yan was afraid, and that Yan was about to surrender. Yan had sent 2 envoys, and they brought 2 very special gifts. The first was the head of Fan Wuji, a defected general whom the kings of Qin hated deeply. The second was a map of the Duca and Ji region of Yan. In those days, a map was not just an ordinary gift. A map meant land, it meant submission. It meant that Yan was willing to hand over its most important territory. So King Yuzheng took this meeting very seriously. He put on formal royal clothing and arranged the most solemn ceremony in Xiangyang Palace to receive the envoys from Yan. But what he did not know was that this was not a surrender ceremony at all. It was a carefully planned assassination. The chief envoy from Yan was named Jing. The deputy envoy was named Qin Wuyang. Jing carried a box containing the severed head, while Qin Wuyang held the map. Step by step, the 2 men entered the Qin court. At that moment, the atmosphere inside the palace was extremely tense. Above the steps stood King Yuzheng. On both sides of the hall stood Qin ministers. Below the platform outside the main hall stood fully armed guards. If Jing showed even the slightest flaw, he and Qin Wuyang would immediately be killed. But just at this critical moment, Qin Wuyang was the first to lose control. Qin Wuyang was said to have killed Amon at the age of 13. He was known in Yan as a brave warrior. But once he entered the Qin court and saw the heavy security and the overwhelming power of the Qin Palace, his face turned pale. His legs began to tremble, and he could barely move forward. The Qin ministers immediately became suspicious. Why would an envoy who had come to present a map and show submission be this terrified? Everyone's eyes turned toward Qin Wuyang. The assassination plan almost failed before it even began. At this moment, Jing K's composure became clear. He did not panic. Instead, he smiled and explained to the king of Qin, "This man comes from a remote northern region. He has never seen the majesty of a king before. He is frightened by your majesty's presence. Please forgive him and allow us to complete our mission." With this explanation, Jing temporarily stabilized the situation. King Yuzheng looked at Qin Wuyang, then looked at Jing. Seeing that Jing was calm, he gave an order. Let Jing bring the map up by himself. For Jing, this sentence was both dangerous and full of opportunity. Qin Wuyang was no longer allowed to come forward. That meant the only person who could get close to the king of Qin was Jing himself. Jing walked up the steps, came before the king of Qin, and slowly began to unroll the map. The map was opened little by little. King Yuzheng's attention was drawn in little by little. The map opened wider and wider. The distance between them became shorter and shorter. The tension grew tighter and tighter. Then, at the very moment when the map was fully opened, a dagger suddenly appeared inside. This became one of the most famous moments in Chinese history. When the map was fully unrolled, the dagger was revealed. Jing grabbed the king of Qin as sleeve with his left hand, held the dagger in his right hand, and stabbed directly toward the king. At that instant, King Yuzheng felt death closer than ever before. He was not seeing danger from far away on a battlefield. He was not hearing about danger from a report inside the palace. A real assassin was standing right in front of him, and the dagger was already coming at him. Yuzheng instinctively pulled backward, and Dalapu saved his life. His sleeve was torn off by Jing. Once the sleeve tore, the king of Qin had seconds to escape. He turned and ran, while Jing chased after him. Imagine this scene. On one side was the future emperor, who would unify the 6 states. On the other side was an assassin, sent by the state of Yan. The 2 men ran around the pillars inside the Qin Palace, one fleeing, one chasing. The ministers panicked. According to Qin Palace rules, ministers were not allowed to carry weapons when entering the hall. The guards below had weapons, but without an order, they were not allowed to rush up onto the platform. In other words, during the most critical few seconds, King Yuzheng could almost only rely on himself. He did have a sword on him, but there was one problem. His sword was too long. The king of Qin's long sword hung at his waist while running. He simply could not draw it out. The more anxious she became, the harder it was to pull the sword free, and the more he failed, the more dangerous the situation became. If Jing's dagger even scratched him, everything might have been over. At this critical moment, one man saved the king of Qin. He was not a general. He was not a warrior. He was the king's royal physician, Xia Wuqi. In desperation, Xia Wuqi threw his medicine bag at Jing. Of course, the medicine bag could not kill Jing, but it bought the king a priceless moment. The king of Qin managed to run a few more steps. The ministers also realized what had to be done and showed head together. Your Majesty, move the sword behind your back and draw it from there. King Yuzheng immediately followed their advice. He shifted the sword behind him and finally pulled the long sword free. The situation changed instantly. Jing had a short dagger, while the king of Qin now had a long sword. Once the surprise attack failed, Jing immediately fell into a disadvantage. The king of Qin struck Jing with his sword. Jing was wounded and fell to the ground, but he still did not give up. He threw his dagger like a flying knife toward the king, but it missed and struck a pillar instead. At that moment, Jing completely lost his weapon. The king of Qin rushed forward and struck him several more times. Then the guards rushed up from below, and Jing was killed. The assassination had failed, but King Yuzheng did not immediately calm down. According to historical records, he sat there afterward, stunned for a long time. Why? Because this was the first time in his life that he had faced death so directly. Before this, King Yuzheng only knew that he wanted to unify the world. But after Jing's assassination attempt, he truly understood one thing. What he had to unify was not just land. What he had to face was the head red of all 6 states. And Jing was not the only person who wanted to kill him. After Jing's death, the king of Qin began searching for Jing's friends. One of Jing's close friends was Gao Jinli, a master musician. Gao Jinli later hid his identity and lived in secret, but actually talented person cannot stay hidden forever. His musical talent gradually became known, and eventually even Qin Shi Huang heard about him. By this time, Qin Shi Huang had already unified the empire. He wanted to hear Gao Jinli perform, but he was also afraid that Gao Jinli might become a second Jing, so he made an extremely cruel decision. He had Gao Jinli blinded, so that Gao could no longer see him, but could still play music for him. Qin Shi Huang thought that this would make him safe, but he underestimated hatred. Later, Gao Jinli filled his instrument with lead and tried to judge Qin Shi Huang's position by sound. hoping to smash him to death with the instrument. The assassination still failed, and Gao Jinli was killed. Later there was another assassin, Zhang Liyang. Zhang Liyang was a noble descendant of the state of Han. After Han was destroyed by Qin, he sold his family property, found an assassin, and ambushed Qin Shi Huang's convoy at Balangsha. They used a huge iron hammer to attack Qin Shi Huang's carriage from a distance, but unfortunately, they hit the wrong carriage. Qin Shi Huang escaped death once again. So when we look at Jing K's attempt to assassinate the king of Qin, we should not see it simply as the passionate story of a lone assassin. Behind it was the final resistance of the old nobles' old powers, unconquered people of the six states against Qin's expansion. What King Yuzheng wanted to do was unprecedented, to unify the world. But to the people of the six states, this was not unification, it was destruction. From Qin's perspective, Yuzheng was ending war and creating order. From Yan's perspective, Jing was fighting for his country's last chance of survival. So here comes the question: was Jing really a hero? For more than 2,000 years, there has never been one single answer. Some people say that Jing was absolutely a hero. He knew he was walking toward death, but he still stepped onto the road to assassinate Qin. The farewell at the Yi River, the image of a warrior leaving and never returning, has been remembered for more than 2,000 years. Others say that Jing was not a hero, because Qin's unification of the six states was the great trend of history. Jing K's assassination attempt was in essence an attempt to stop unification. If he had succeeded, the world might have remained divided, and the wars might have continued even longer. Still others say that Jing was merely a blade in the hands of Crown Prince Dan. He accepted his hospitality, received his favor, and in the end could only repay him with his life. But I think the most fascinating thing about history is this: it rarely has only one answer. Was King Yuzheng a hero? Judging by the result, he ended the chaos of the Warring States period and founded the first unified empire in Chinese history. He was certainly a world-changing figure. What about Gao Jinli and Zhang Liyang? They refused to accept the fate of national destruction and used extreme methods to resist Qin Shi Huang. They may not have changed history, but they represented the pain and resentment of another group of people in that era. What about Gao Jinli and Zhang Liyang? They refused to accept the fate of national destruction and used extreme methods to resist Qin Shi Huang. They may not have changed history, but they represented the pain and resentment of another group of people in that era. So the true power of Jing assassination attempt is not simply that it almost succeeded. It is that in that moment, the two men inside the palace represented two completely different historical forces. One man wanted to build a new order. The other wanted to avenge an old kingdom. One man survived and became Qin Shi Huang. The other fell and became the legendary assassin remembered through the ages. In the end, King Yuzheng won. In 221 BC, he destroyed the six states, founded the Qin Dynasty, and called himself the first emperor. He hoped that his empire would be passed down from the second generation to the third, and down for 10,000 generations. But ironically, this empire that seemed so powerful lasted only a little more than a decade before it collapsed. And although Jing failed, his name, together with Qin Shi Huang's, was permanently engraved in history. This is what makes Qin Shi Huang so complicated. He was both the first emperor who unified China, an ancient hated and touched by countless people. He created the imperial system, but he also planted the seeds of Qin-shaped collapse. So here comes the question: was Qin Shi Huang great, or was he brutal? Was he a hero or a dictator? Why did he never establish an empress? Why did he never clearly name a crown prince? Why are there so many mysteries about his birth? And how many secrets are still hidden inside his mausoleum? Starting from the next episode, we will truly enter the life of Qin Shi Huang. From the moment he was born in Handan, in the state of Jiao, we will see how this man, pushed by fate to the highest position in history, step by step became one of the most controversial emperors China has ever known. Follow me in the next episode. We will continue with the mystery of Qin Shi Huang's birth. Was he really the son of El Bu Wei?